Day 17 of the war with Iran, and here's where things stand. 13 U.S. service members have lost their lives. More than 140 have been injured. On the unintended consequences side of the House, Donald Trump is trying and failing to bully our allies into helping him break Iran's stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz, through which 1/5 of the world's oil supply travels. The price of gas continues to soar, and Donald Trump's energy secretary admits that there is no guarantee that prices will come down soon. Facing a mountain of bad headlines, Team Trump's response? To threaten to revoke the broadcast licenses of networks who dare to report the truth. Now in its third week, and the war with Iran does not look anything like the, quote, little excursion Trump claimed. Today, an Iranian drone struck Dubai's airport. That is one of the busiest in the world, causing a new round of disruptions. Israel is expanding its operations in southern Lebanon to fight Hezbollah. Here at home, oil prices now average $3.71 a gallon. That is up almost 25 cents from 1 week ago. Pressed about the spike in prices, Trump's energy secretary, that's Chris Wright, tried to say that this is a case of short-term pain for long-term gain before backing off that claim in a matter of seconds.
This is why President Trump needed to act now to stop the killing of American soldiers, to stop the destabilization in the region, and to end Iran's ability to threaten energy markets. Yes, we go through this period of short-term disruption, but better to do it now than to have a nuclear-armed Iran.
Are you really sure it's going to be short-term? Can you guarantee it'll just be weeks before prices go down?
Hey, there's no guarantees in wars at all. I can guarantee this situation would be dramatically worse without this military operation to defang the Iranian regime.
Now the Trump administration is asking for help to solve the oil supply crisis it created. The Wall Street Journal reports that the administration wants to cobble together a coalition of countries that will escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The plan, though, falls apart the minute you try to read the fine print. Wall Street Journal explains, quote, the U.S. and potential coalition countries are still discussing whether those operations would begin before or after the war ends. New York Times reports that no one has signed up. From their report, quote, the sharpest refusal to his belated effort to build an international coalition against Iran came Monday from Germany, whose defense minister said, quote, this is not our war. We did not start it, end quote. Top officials in Japan, Italy, and Australia said Monday that their countries will not participate in efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Others were non-committal, including France, South Korea, and Britain, whose Prime Minister Keir Starmer said his country, quote, would not be drawn into wider war. From our allies, who Donald Trump has spent more than a year denigrating and maligning their sacrifices in past wars, Donald Trump now would like those same allies to sign up to put their soldiers in harm's way for a war that Donald Trump started without any of their input. Watch.
We have some countries where we have 45,000 soldiers, great soldiers, protecting them from harm's way. And we have done a great job. And when we want to know, do you have any minesweepers? Well, would rather not get involved, sir. I said, for 40 years we're protecting you, and you don't want to get involved in something that is very minor. Very few shots going to be taken because they don't have many shots left. But they said, we'd rather not get involved.
As Trump's efforts to find a solution to the oil supply crisis falter, the New York Times is reporting that here at home, the war with Iran puts Donald Trump further from his goals of lowering interest rates. From that reporting, quote, officials at the Fed are widely expected to hold rates steady at a range of 3.5% to 3.75%, extending a pause that began in January. Most officials believe rates at this level are only modestly restraining growth, if at all, suggesting little rush to change course for the time being. That approach is directly at odds with what Trump wants. Donald Trump faltering in his efforts to solve an oil supply crisis that threatens to turn into an economic crunch is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. New York Times diplomatic correspondent Michael Crowley is here. Also joining us, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling is here. He served as the commanding general of the U.S. Army in Europe. His new book, If I Don't Return, A Father's Wartime Journal, is amazing. It is out now. And with me at the table, executive editor and New York bureau chief for The Economist, Charlotte Howard, is here. I'm torn between which one of you to start with, but I'm going to just follow on to the economic indicators flashing bright yellow, maybe even red.
Well, we've had some data in recent days about consumer prices in January, which seem to be creeping up. So even before this war began, there was upward pressure on prices, which was at odds with the Trump administration's long push to get this Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. And I think now that you see oil prices consistently above $100 a barrel, it seems very, very unlikely, not just that the Fed won't lower interest rates at its meeting in March, but even looking further ahead, it seems very unlikely that this Federal Reserve is going to take steps to lower interest rates. And of course, this comes at a time when there's been just historic friction between the administration and Jerome Powell. You had a judge
trying to prosecute him.
Exactly. A judge rejected the effort to subpoena Jerome Powell just a few days ago. So even that might have been this morning, excuse me. And so, you know, it's quite an interesting moment for the Fed. But I do think you see the Trump administration realizing the extent to which it cannot control the economic fallout from this war. It cannot bully, or at least so far has been unable to bully, allies into participating in an effort to open up the Strait of Hormuz again. You know, it seems that insulting allies is not a way to get them to work with you. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Pete Hegseth calling war deliberations pearl clutching on the part of America's allies. So, you know, I really think that you're seeing right now the Trump administration trying to throw its weight around, but without much effect.
I want to ask you about the strikes in Dubai. I mean, this has been a place that has been such a magnet for business, for tourism, for development. It has exploded in popularity. People have relocated from all over the world, and now very much not immune from this widening war.
Yeah, I think there's been a real effort on behalf of not just Dubai, but of course Abu Dhabi as well, to position themselves as safe havens within a volatile region with quite a lot of success. You know, you've seen, as you just alluded to, lots of foreign multinationals coming in, people, expats setting up within Dubai. And I think the illusion of security has been shattered in recent weeks. And so when you think about the participation of Gulf states in this war, you know, that's something that we need to continue to watch, because there are real risks to America's allies in the region. And so the conflict in that regard may continue to escalate.
Michael Crowley, the Trump administration really from top to bottom has been at war against journalists covering the war. Some of it may have started with the accurate coverage of the servicemen and women who lost their lives in the plane crash in Iraq, but it certainly extended through Pete Hegseth's briefing on Friday, where he said Larry Ellison can't take over CNN soon enough. Brandon Carr got in on the game, threatening to revoke licenses. The Wall Street Journal and the New York Times have had some extraordinary reporting on how haphazard not just the entry into the war has been, but the response to the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has called them straits. It's just one. He's said several times publicly that they should just go for it, like go through, as though there's either a lack of understanding about the insurance issues or the military issues, and or both. And even those comments I played today, he said they won't fire at you because there's nothing left to fire. I've not seen a single military analyst on any network echo that assessment. Just take me through where things stand.
Yeah, Nicole, and it's unfortunate because, you know, the argument here is that the media is reflexively criticizing anything President Trump does and is overplaying a sense of chaos and confusion. First of all, I would just note that, you know, a huge number of our headlines are just factually stating that there's a massive aerial campaign underway. We're hitting hundreds of Iranian targets, inflicting massive damage, killing Iranian leaders. And, you know, the TV networks carry the briefings that the Pentagon does live, so giving them a platform to get their views out in an unfettered way. And President Trump, of course, when he speaks, usually gets live coverage. So the the basic facts in the administration's message are getting out there. There seems to be this puzzling objection to covering casualties, and when a preliminary investigation the U.S. government says was a U.S. Tomahawk missile hit a girls' school and killed 175 or so innocent Iranians, many of them children. We did report aggressively on it, as did other outlets. And I would note that the administration tried to sort of deflect and dissemble, President Trump in particular. So, on their side of the ledger, there's not always been transparency, and there has been, in that particular case, an effort to sweep what looks like a terrible tragedy under the rug. So it's frustrating to hear that, no doubt. And look, the other piece of this is that there's no contesting the fact that the administration's message has been all over the place. And President Trump has repeatedly cited different goals for this mission, at times has said it has involved protecting the Iranian people from their regime, taking out and replacing the regime, finding leaders he can work with. He's pretty consistent in talking about the nuclear program and the missile program, but these are different threads, and they, from the words of the president and his senior advisors, they don't add up to a clear, coherent war plan. And so I think that that's been reflected in the coverage, but I think to lash out at the media is not fair. And, just to finish here, I would say that what you have right now is a huge question mark. A lot of people had suspected that by now President Trump might just declare victory and call this off and try to get back to lower oil prices. As former Secretary of State Antony Blinken put it last week, declare victory and having traded one Ayatollah for another. But it looks like he's hanging in there for now, and he's suggesting they're going to solve this problem in the Strait of Hormuz. Nicole, it's a huge problem. It's not something you can do quickly. It's not a scenario that he prepared the American public for. It's not a scenario that he himself seems to have thought through in a lot of detail. And I would point in particular to the fact that he's now asking for help from U.S. allies who were totally excluded from the planning and preparation of this, who were caught by surprise and in some cases actually sort of insulted and said, you're not welcome. And now the president needs them for this problem from hell in the Strait of Hormuz. And again, I don't see a plan. So the press coverage is going to reflect that, and we're probably in for more criticism.